Today at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, Donald Trump will appear in court over the new conspiracy charges where they claim that he was trying to defraud the American public and overturn his loss in 2020. The argument being it was criminal because he knew he lost and he intentionally lied to claim he won in an effort to stop Joe Biden from becoming president. It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard because I'm not sure any sane person who has complained about Donald Trump being an egomaniac believes that Trump thought he lost, right? So let's break that down one more time. There is no way that Donald Trump was actually sitting there looking at the numbers going like, well, I lost this one. Even if Donald Trump lost by 30 points, he'd be like, no, it's rigged, I won. So who believes this? You got all these liberals coming out being like, Donald Trump knew he lost. Oh, come on. You can't come to me for years claiming the dude's an egomaniac who loves the smell of his own farts. And then this one time be like, actually, no, he did believe he lost. He believed that people did not love him. Well, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. We've got the latest report on what's going on. The question is, will Donald Trump be remanded to custody? Of course not. The likelihood of that happening is extremely low. And that would be catastrophic for the Democrats if they actually did. But hold on there a minute. Now, there's something interesting here. Shouldn't he be remanded to custody? Donald Trump is accused of trying to overthrow the United States government. For what reason would they reasonably say that someone accused of such a crime, who owns multiple jets, including a jumbo jet with gold-plated seat belts, should be a billionaire, is allowed to go, just, come back later? If this was a serious charge, they would say, Sir Trump, you cannot leave. We do not trust you'll stay. And didn't they claim that he was a Russian agent? Wouldn't they want to prevent him from fleeing to Russia? Come on. You're talking about putting this guy in prison for 561 years. I mean, let's be real. Trump's already nearly 80 years old. He's almost past, I think he's not quite at average life expectancy for an American male. But how many years does he really have left at this point? Maybe that's the argument why they're going to let him go. Maybe they'd love it if he fled. But let's just remove Donald Trump from the equation. And let's say an individual was accused of trying to overthrow the government. What would the government do? Well, you need look no further than the Bundy Ranch scenario and Ammon Bundy and his family and how they tried to frame him and they locked him up and effectively tortured these guys. And they weren't even accused of trying to overthrow anything. They were accused of being on land they didn't own. So you mean to tell me that you're accusing Donald Trump of probably the worst crime in this country because it's against the fabric of this country, and you're not going to remand him? So here's my point. Donald Trump should not be remanded. Donald Trump should not be charged. But by all reasonable approaches, if they truly believed what they were saying, they would absolutely remand Donald Trump and not allow him to leave the country. The guy's got a jumbo jet. He's got several helicopters. He's worth billions of dollars. So why would they say, nah, you're good, you're good? Look, classified documents thing? Yeah, we get that, right? Yeah, it's some documents. We'll see what happens. There's serious charges, but, that's not apocalyptic. Tax issues in New York City? Come on, that makes sense. It's a white-collar crime. He pays a fine or something, or a slap on the wrist. Now, here's what to expect, right? Here's what Al Jazeera says to expect. And then I want to show you what we should reasonably expect. They say, Trump is expected to be processed by law enforcement to officially be taken into custody and to enter a not guilty plea in front of a judge before being released so he can rejoin the campaign trail as he seeks to reclaim the White House in 2024. Now, why? Seriously, they're accusing him of trying to overthrow the United States. Where are my liberal friends at, huh? Hey, liberals. Y'all should be screaming that Donald Trump should not be released, right? Strangely, they're not doing it. The charges could lead to a years-long prison sentence in the event of a conviction. Now, it's not just the federal government, and this is where things get interesting. In this story from the Daily Mail, Trump, quote, will get a mugshot in Georgia. Sheriff says he won't get special treatment and will have to pose for the cameras when arrested if he is hit with election fraud charges in the state. And he will be. The Fulton County DA, leftist, has already said our work is done here. Barricades have been placed. And many people believe that very soon they will announce an indictment at the state level, or I suppose the local level, whatever it is in Fulton County, against Donald Trump for trying to overthrow the election. Let's break down what this really is. In Fulton County, there were some, let's just say irregularities. And that's not in dispute. The left argues that these things just happen. They're not that big a deal. The right argues it's proof of malfeasance. I'm not going to assert one way or the other, just that, in one instance, they found like a bunch of votes that were like a USB drive and things like that. Okay. So Trump is always going to believe the most extreme version of events that benefit him. Why not? The left is always going to believe the most extreme version of events that benefit them. So when Donald Trump hears this story, he immediately says, we got to call our guys in Georgia and figure out what's going on. So he calls and says, what is going on with these ballots? What's happening? And now we get to the question at hand. When Donald Trump says, find the votes or whatever, the left interpretation of this, and I believe willfully misinterpreted and duplicitous, their interpretation is that Donald Trump was saying to fabricate votes by, quote, find votes. And I made this point a while ago by saying find votes in the context of just count them, right? When Donald Trump said find the votes, he wasn't telling them to manufacture votes. He was saying go down, do recounts, figure out what's going on. And you can tell that was the case based on all of the other conversations that Donald Trump had in various jurisdictions, talking about mail-in voting, talking about votes being disqualified. He wasn't saying fabricate. He was saying the votes are there. What's going on? Now, you don't got to take his word for it, and so I won't. The point is this. In Georgia, the question, if they're saying he's going to go through this mugshot process, why would they not remand him to custody? Serious question. Now, in the very simple sense of things, none of us want to see Trump remanded. It is nightmarish. It could destroy the fabric of this country. We're already seeing the fabric of this nation being torn to shreds by Joe Biden, the Democratic Party. But you got to think counterintuitively. And at this point, I'm just saying, I hope that Donald Trump is remanded to custody. I hope. Because it would, some people are like, yeah, light it up, get it going. I don't think there will be mass riots or anything like this. I think that if Donald Trump is remanded to custody, it would be a shock to the system. You won't see Trump supporters going out and smashing anything like that. You won't. You will just see the largest fundraiser in the history of this country for Donald Trump. His polls will skyrocket by 20 or 30%. This is how it goes. And there's probably some other unforeseen things I can't think about, but you make a move like that against Trump, and that's why they won't do it. They know if they actually carried through with what they should do based on their argument, it would help Trump in the most extreme way possible. So let me just simplify it. A man who owns multiple jets is a billionaire with properties in foreign countries who's been accused of being a Russian spy, tried to overthrow the U.S. government, they claim, and you're going to let him just go? The dude could hop on a plane and take off and you couldn't stop him. You want to talk about a flight risk? Donald Trump is the definition. But they won't do it. Because what they're actually doing is political manipulation. They don't actually believe what they're saying about Trump. They don't actually believe he tried to overthrow the government. They are just trying to cause political damage. Meet Donald Trump's air fleet. Look at this one. He's got a 757. What else did they mention? He's got 2 helicopters. He's got a Cessna Citation X corporate jet 12-seater. Ooh, that's a nice one. That one's got its own bathroom. Painted white, the plane features the Trump family crest. His 757, it's got, what do they say? What is it? The plane seats 24 with 1 bedroom registered in Bermuda. They mentioned that in this, what do they say? Gold-plated seat belts. So you mean to tell me you got a guy, 4 aircraft is actually a major downside for Trump, who used to own a fleet of 17. You mean to tell me that this guy who tried to overthrow the U.S. and owns multiple jets, you're not going to remand? The Dispatch, the new Trump indictment is less clear-cut, yet the politics seems straightforward. Yeah. A lot of people are praising this piece from the Dispatch, saying it's a difficult case to prove because you got to prove Trump lied. And how do you do that? Everyone's going to just say that, Donald Trump believes all this stuff. But there's an important bit of information. Stephen L. Miller says, a reminder that Biden directed Garland himself to charge Trump. In this snippet from a New York Times article, it says, but he does have opinions. In the past, Mr. Biden privately told his close circle of advisors that Mr. Trump posed a threat to democracy and should be prosecuted for his role in the events of January 6, according to two people familiar with his comments. He also told confidants that he wanted Attorney General Merrick B. Garland to stop acting like a ponderous judge and take decisive action. The Attorney General's deliberative approach has come to frustrate Democratic allies of the White House and at times President Biden himself. As recently as late last year, Mr. Biden confided to his inner circle that he believed former President Trump was a threat to democracy and should be prosecuted. Biden told Garland to do this. Joe Biden knew Donald Trump would win in 2024. Donald Trump is wrong about how he lost 2020, and that's fine. A lot of people are wrong about 2020. There's a lot of information and a lot of questionable things. But the issue at hand is that some people will say that the election was stolen. Okay, well, that's fine to say that. You just got to define what you mean by stolen. All right. Hillary Clinton said the election was stolen from her. She defined that by Russians interfered to help Trump. How was the election stolen in 2020 from Donald Trump? Initially, the big claims were that Donald Trump was still secretly the president who would be brought in and march the true date that America was a corporation, blah, all this other crazy stuff. And it's like, ugh, eye roll. There were servers in Germany and the CIA had a shootout and there were satellites. Venezuela was engaging with manipulation. China was making fake ballots. Come on, guys. And when I call that out, people are like, you don't believe you're lying. That was fraud, blah, blah, blah. The real issue is simple. Mass ballot harvesting, that's legal. Procedural changes. There were lawsuits about whether or not they were allowed to make these changes, but these were not Chinese spies dumping fake ballots. These were people in the United States who were zealous fanatics who went and did the work for Democrats and got people to sign off in nursing homes and otherwise. It was the COVID lockdowns, partly Trump's own fault. Partly, he's not a governor, but he did support 2 weeks to slow the spread in the beginning, which kicked the whole thing off. He could have said no. And what ends up happening is that everyone's locked in their houses. They're extremely angry. There's mass rioting. And then someone knocks on their door and says, we can make it all go away. Just sign on the dotted line. A lot of Republicans were like, I can't believe that Trump lost because down ballot, the Democrats didn't get votes. How is it that someone would vote for Joe Biden and not for the other Democrats? And I'm like, that's easily explained. People went and knocked on a door and said, vote for Joe Biden and vote for everyone else. And they were like, I don't know about none of this stuff. And the people just vote for Biden, sign it and hand it off. You get a guy knocking on your door and you don't care. And you're like, guy, go away. He says, okay, well, I'm going to come back every day and knock on your door until you just hand me that little envelope right there. Republicans weren't doing this. And now don't get me wrong. There was lax signature verification. We saw this where a lot of the signatures were questionable, but they said, nah, it's fine. And it was, I think typically you get like around 1% rejection and they had like 0.1% rejection, meaning they were trying very hard to collect as many votes as possible for Joe Biden. I don't believe that it was Chinese fake ballots, double, there are people like, but we all watched a video where the lady ran the ballots twice. When she put there's a video of this, it's true. A lady puts the ballots in, presses a button, picks them up, puts them back in. That does not mean it double counted ballots because the ballots, perhaps, I'm assuming, are serialized. And either way, it could be something as simple as read error, please reinsert. And then everyone assumes something absolutely nefarious. And if you focus in on that, you ignore the more obvious things. There was a lawsuit. 48 states were involved over the legality of these election changes that bypassed state legislatures. That was how they did it. Then they mentioned that there's a video of them pulling ballots from under a table. Watch the full security footage, because I did. And you can actually see them collect ballots from people, put them in the box, and then push them under the table. Several hours later, they pull them out and start counting those ballots. But when you only get a small snippet, the point is this. What they're trying to do is throw red meat at you to trick you into looking the wrong direction. How did they win? Mass mail-in voting, which they did again in the midterms. Voting in the park, mail drop boxes. They actually went out and collected ballots, ballot harvesting. And while Donald Trump was screaming about all this stuff and all these people were claiming all this weird conspiracy nonsense, the Democrats were laughing because they knew they got away with it. They had convinced Trump supporters to speak about the craziest things imaginable. It worked. It absolutely worked. Distracting them. People kept saying, this is the funniest thing. Every month they'd be like, on March 13th, Trump will be president. Then March 13th passes, like, it's actually going to be April 3rd. And then April 3rd passes, well, it's actually going to be July. And I'm like, what is going on with these people who just believe this? And they did. The reality is this. As of right now, we know Joe Biden ordered Trump's arrest because he's desperately trying to stop his political opponent. That right there is the crime, is the criminal conspiracy that is happening before our eyes. They know that Trump did not do this. They know that Trump had legitimate questions. They know that Trump was advised by lawyers. Lawyers can be wrong, but the idea that lawyers can't advise you, and all of this, the charges against Trump, are predicated upon one fact, one question of fact. Did Donald Trump know he lost? Yeah, I think any sane person's going to say there's no way Trump thought he lost. There's no way Trump thought he lost. Trump is a celebrity. He's got a bit of an ego. He thinks he's the best. He kept his promises. He got more votes. And so let me break it down for you. The bellwether counties, typically never wrong. All of a sudden, all of them were wrong. There's an easy explanation for that. Now, a lot of people don't want to believe the bellwether counties could be wrong, but I simply say this. It's possible something nefarious is afoot, but it's also plausible that with the mass exodus from certain areas, from cities, because of COVID, it rapidly shifted voting patterns. Thus, you'll end up seeing you'll have like a voter turnout rate above 100%. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying don't investigate that, ask those questions. But if you get a bunch of people from one area moving to another area and then very quickly changing their votes and then registering, you'll say like, hey, last year there were 10,000 voters here and we got 13,000 votes today. Yes, because everybody left New York and went to the suburb or something like that. That's entirely possible. I think that was actually one of the stories we had read. These things change the shape of how the bellwether counties will react. But you go to Trump and say that he's going to be like, that proves it. And that's what a lot of Trump supporters are saying. How could it be possible? I'm not saying it's definitive. I'm saying it is possible. Demographic shift because of COVID, riots, lockdown. People were fleeing New York. 500,000 people left Manhattan. Where are they going to go? They moved around to a bunch of different areas and it changed voting patterns. So that could have a big impact. But you go to Trump and you say that and he absolutely will believe he did not lose. And I think it's reasonable to ask questions about these shifts because they're dramatic. We've not seen them before. We've also not seen a mass lockdown like the COVID lockdowns. So who knows what to expect? But that means that Donald Trump's questions were legitimate. It means that Donald Trump had a right to challenge the results the way he did at the advice of legal counsel. And he did not commit any crimes. It means that Joe Biden, in my opinion, knows full well he cannot win without the lockdowns. How are they going to do mass mail-in voting when people are going to be too busy watching football, watching baseball, playing poker? I got to tell you, man, last weekend, I'm hanging out at the casino, playing a game of poker with the boys. Orioles game is on the TV. Everybody's laughing, having a good time, and it is fantastic. You know, throughout the day, we do this political stuff. We get the serious, we get the weeds. We talk about the nightmare scenarios, the dystopia, the corruption and all that. And then we want to go relax, take some time with the family and the friends. And so over the weekend, that's what we do. And you know what? It is beauteous. So what happens this election cycle when you get Donald Trump overload, when you get people just saying, I can't take it anymore? And a lot of people do. They say, I'm burned out. I am so over this. They just don't want to be involved. How will you get them to vote? Trump supporters are going to vote. Trump supporters are going to vote like zealots. You got Scott Presler going around registering more and more voters. People are pissed, the people who pay attention. But these Democrats are going to be like, dude, don't care. Leave me alone. Y'all are nuts. These past several years under Biden have been horrifying, have been strange and nightmarish. The Afghanistan debacle, inflation through the roof, World War III. And you're going to say, come out and vote. And they're going to be like, I don't care. I don't want to hear it. The game is on. Now, hold on. Why wasn't that the case in 2020? Simple. There was no game. They were locked in a room. They couldn't leave. And the only thing they heard over and over again on every social media platform, on television, was Trump did this to you. And so finally, when someone knocked on the door and says, we can make it all go away, shiny mail-in ballot, it works. But you're not going to have that this time around. Voter, I don't even want to say turnout, but voter participation will not be at the same levels. But for Trump voters, it will be. Joe Biden has nothing to offer you. He doesn't. That's why they must remove Donald Trump in the only way they can. They're throwing everything at him, death by 1,000 cuts. The question will be, how will this turn out? Now, again, at 4 p.m. today, we'll see. But I believe if this was done by the book with legitimacy, Trump would be remanded to custody. But they won't do that because the real point is to cause political damage without causing political damage to themselves. The true law and order move would be Trump tried to do this, therefore he can't leave. The political move is let's cause damage to Trump, but make sure we don't benefit him in any way by making him a martyr. So we'll see. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.